This is not a story about haunted temples, not about bodies that rise after midnight. It is about something far more unsettling, an obituary that has appeared every Valentine's Day for 12 consecutive years. Each year, the same young man, the same age, the same photograph. Only the cause of death changes. Some people die once, but what if someone keeps dying? Again and again. This is the story called The Obituary. Valentine's Day. For some reason, the weather always seems unusually pleasant on that day. This year was no exception. I had been busy all night finishing a special feature article. Only when I finally began arranging the layout did I realize what day it was. But in the newsroom, there was no romance in the air. Everyone was far too busy to care. Here's an obituary. Find a spot for it on page 6. The colleague from the advertising department tossed a thin sheet of paper onto my desk. I remember thinking, who chooses Valentine's Day to die? Then I looked at the photograph. The face felt strangely familiar. It was a black and white portrait. Even so, the man's features were delicate, almost too delicate. We usually describe women as graceful or refined. For a man, such words rarely fit, but they suited him perfectly. A thin but not elongated face, a broad yet not wide forehead, long narrow eyebrows. His eyes were difficult to see clearly, hidden behind rimless glasses. Yet the glasses gave him a scholarly air. His lips were thin and tightly pressed together, as if he were both fragile and stubborn. He looked like the type of man who could make women feel comfortable, but never quite fall in love with him. I read his name softly under my breath. It sounded familiar, but memory is a mischievous thing. The harder you try to grasp it, the further it slips away. Annoyed, I stopped trying. Still, his face lingered in my mind. I placed the obituary and photograph on page 6. Only 22 years old, I muttered. He looked troubled, even in the photograph. His brows were slightly furrowed, as though he carried some private sorrow. Normally, obituaries don't include photos, but the person who submitted it had insisted. My colleague warned him it would cost extra. He didn't care. Cause of death: suicide by cutting of wrists. There were very few additional details. I sent it to proofreading and thought little more about it. Morning passed quickly. Just before getting off work, the editor told me to help reorganize the archives. With the new year approaching, the old newspapers needed to be moved. I rolled up my sleeves and began digging through stacks of preserved papers. They were dusty, but thankfully not moldy. And then, I found a newspaper dated February 14th, last year. My hands froze. There it was again. The same face, the same photograph, another obituary, but the cause of death was different. Poisoning, still 22 years old. I pulled it out and stared at it. Someone once said, life only happens once. But could someone die repeatedly? It had to be a prank, a cruel joke. Someone must truly despise this man. I tossed the paper aside. Then a thought struck me. There was only one way to know whether it was a joke. I convinced my coworker to let me handle the archives alone. In exchange, I promised to finish organizing everything myself. Once he left, I dragged out every February 14th edition I could find. The oldest one dated back 12 years. 12 newspapers, all laid out in front of me. All February 14th. All carrying the same obituary, the same photograph, the same 22-year-old man. The only difference was the method of suicide. jumping from a building, poison, wrist slitting, hanging, gunshot, and more. 12 years, 12 deaths. I covered my mouth. The dust on my clothes didn't matter anymore. If this was a prank, it was elaborate beyond reason. Yet curiosity is a powerful thing, stronger than fear. I needed to find whoever had been submitting these obituaries. According to my colleague, the person always came wrapped up like a mummy. Hat, sunglasses, mask. Impossible to identify. Did that mean I had to wait until next Valentine's Day? There had to be another clue. I decided to investigate. I checked hospitals, funeral homes, contacted acquaintances. No such death had occurred. Not this year. Not in previous years. Had it really all been a joke? Then a high school friend of mine, now a local police officer, paused after hearing my story over the phone. He said it wasn't something he wanted to discuss on the line. So I went to see him. Before I could ask much, he lit a cigarette. When I first joined the precinct, he said, I heard about a strange guy in our district. He tapped ash onto his polished shoes. Most officers pointed at his photo and said, don't provoke him. Don't talk to him. Not that he talks much anyway. He leaned closer. He's lived here a long time. Keeps himself wrapped up all year round, even in summer. Claims he's a writer. A writer? I asked. My friend snorted. Writer, my ass. Stays home all day scribbling. Never published a damn thing. But I heard he tried to kill himself once, over 10 years ago. They saved him. After that, he changed. He lowered his voice. Every February, something about him feels wrong. I laughed it off. Alive is alive. What's there to fear? He gave me the address anyway. Still, he said before I left, you better not go. My grandfather used to read feng shui. I know a little myself. Every February, that guy carries the smell of death. I dismissed it, but the words stayed with me. Following the address, I found the house, dilapidated beyond belief. The exterior was riddled with cracks and holes. I had no idea how anyone could still live there, unless it wasn't a person living there at all. The thought sent a chill through me. Ridiculous. I walked up and knocked, calling his name loudly. The door creaked open by itself. No answer. I stepped inside. A strange smell filled the air. Oddly familiar, like my college dormitory after 4 years of neglect. The room wasn't small, but it was suffocatingly cluttered. Clothes piled high. Beer cans scattered everywhere. I carefully navigated through the mess. Whoever lived here drank heavily. I opened the windows. Fresh air drifted in, and the room felt slightly more breathable. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. And that was when I saw it. On the desk, buried beneath layers of dust and manuscripts, a stack of old newspapers, all dated February 14th. And on top of them, a photograph. The same photograph. The one I had placed on page 6 that very morning. But this one was not black and white. It was freshly printed, still warm. At the far end of the room stood a desk. It was probably the only thing in the house that looked remotely orderly. About 1 meter long, pressed tightly against the wall. On it, books were stacked neatly, novels from all over the world. Some I even recognized. The Call of the Wild, A Tale of Two Cities. There were also collections of strange folklore and supernatural tales. The man had wide tastes. Beside the books lay a thick stack of manuscripts, unfinished. A desk lamp stood nearby, carefully wiped clean, though its bulb had darkened with age, and the orange lampshade was nearly torn. It had clearly been working for many years. Nothing unusual, I muttered to myself. The place was a typical bachelor's residence. Beyond the main room were a kitchen and a bathroom. Neither was locked. Then again, there was hardly anything worth stealing here. An ancient 21-inch television, a dusty old VCR, that was about it. The neighborhood security was decent. Leaving doors unlocked wasn't impossible. But then, I found something. At the corner of the single bed, neatly placed, was a black coat, sunglasses, a hat, shoes, even a full set of underclothes. A thought struck me. Was the person who submitted the obituary himself? The idea was absurd. Who publishes their own obituary? Yet the absurdity didn't last long. Inside the coat pocket, I found a receipt from my newspaper office. My stomach tightened. That meant he had personally come in this morning. I suddenly realized I was committing trespass, rummaging through someone else's belongings. I should have left. Instead, curiosity won again. Beneath the television, I discovered a stack of videotapes. Each had a label on its side. I read one aloud. February 14th, 1999. My heart skipped. I checked the others. Every single tape was dated February 14th, from 12 years ago to today. Without thinking, I slid today's tape into the VCR. The screen flickered. The image was dim. But there he was. He looked far thinner than in the photograph. Darker. His hair sparse, as though unevenly chewed away. Though he should have been young, he looked prematurely aged. Heavy, dark circles framed his eyes. He stared blankly at the camera. "Another Valentine's Day," he rasped. "This makes 13. What must I do before you forgive me?" His voice was hoarse, like someone who had cried. Tear streaks were still visible on his cheeks. He was shirtless. In his hand, a razor blade. Without hesitation, he drew it across his wrist. Blood surged instantly. He stopped speaking. His lips pressed shut. His face grew pale. Then he lay down. I looked at the timestamp on the video. 13:40. I checked my watch. 2:30 p.m. Less than an hour ago. He had killed himself here. I looked around. The floor showed signs of being wiped. In the bathroom, I found a mop stained with blood. If he killed himself, then who cleaned up? And where was the camera? The tape suddenly ended in static. I reached to eject it, but it jammed. At that exact moment, the windows and door, which I had opened, slammed shut. I tried to open them. They wouldn't budge. I was locked inside. The VCR began making a grinding sound. The static faded. A new image appeared. It was the same room, but different. Someone was standing near the doorway. Someone I recognized instantly. It was me. I waved my arms. The figure on the screen waved too. The timestamp read 2:40 p.m. Now, but I saw no camera. Hidden lens. Micro device. The camera angle seemed to be from the right. I moved toward the right side of the room. On the screen, I grew larger. Yes, the lens was there. But all that stood there was a pile of his discarded clothes. I shook them open. Nothing inside. The screen shifted again. The viewpoint began rotating. Not me, the camera. It circled me slowly. In the room, I was alone. Yet on the television, I was being watched. It moved behind me. No matter how I turned, the screen always showed the back of my neck. It stopped. Silence. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. Then, a deep male sigh came through the speakers, hoarse, the sound of long-term smoking. I stared at the screen and saw something on my shoulder. At first, just a fingernail. I blinked. then a finger, the middle finger. I slowly turned. Half of a finger rested on my shoulder. Before I could react, something began forming in the air, like a body rising from water, like an invisible painter sketching a man into existence. An arm, white bone first, then muscle, then nerves, then blood, then skin, piece by piece. In seconds, a human body materialized before my eyes. I didn't blink. I forgot fear. What could be more astonishing than witnessing creation itself? The man's left hand rested on my shoulder. There was a scar across his wrist. He was breathing heavily. I helped him sit on the bed. It was him, the man from the Obituary. He looked weak, struggling even to inhale. I poured him water. He didn't look at me. He drank 4 cups. Finally, he spoke. "I saw you when you came in," he said quietly. "You just couldn't see me. I'd only just died." "Died?" I asked. "Yes," he replied calmly. "I always return. Since the first time, I've died 13 times. 13 times. He said it as casually as someone counting birthdays. "You're a journalist," he added. I nodded. "I've read your articles. You believe in the supernatural. Then perhaps you'll find this interesting." I pulled over a chair. We sat facing each other. "Most people believe life happens only once," he began. 14 years ago, I believed that too. He told me he had once been a poor writer living off the last of his family's savings, chasing a dream others called foolish. Then he met a girl. He refused to say her name. At first, everything felt beautiful. She encouraged him, believed in him, but her parents opposed them fiercely. No parent wants their daughter marrying a man with no future. He smiled bitterly. They were right. They suffered. They even ran away together, like something from a cheap romantic film. But reality prevailed. "She looked gentle," he said softly, "but she was stronger than I ever was. The night before Valentine's Day, she held him and whispered, 'Let's die together, like lovers in stories.' I believe souls still exist after death." She wasn't joking. He wasn't strong enough to refuse. Years of failure had crushed what little pride he had left. So they made a pact. February 14th, 1:40 p.m. They would jump together. She insisted on jumping. Fast, beautiful, dramatic, she had said, and he agreed. He stopped speaking. For a long moment, he stared at his scarred wrist. Outside, the sky was still bright with Valentine's Day sunlight. But inside that crumbling room, I had the distinct feeling that this was only the beginning of the story, and that whatever happened at 1:40 p.m. that year had never truly ended. "We didn't choose an apartment building," he continued. "We went to an abandoned factory instead, remote, forgotten." They climbed a towering smokestack, but when he stood at the top, he became afraid. For the first time in his life, he truly feared death. "Jump," she told him calmly, adjusting her collar. She was as beautiful as always, but he said that in that moment, looking at her made him uneasy. "Maybe we should think of another way," he finally said. "We don't have to die." She stared at him, expressionless. Then she smiled. "You'll regret this." And she jumped. Seconds later, a dull, heavy thud echoed through the empty factory. Then silence. His legs gave out. He collapsed at the top and cried the entire afternoon. When darkness fell, he finally climbed down. "There was no body," he said suddenly. His voice changed, shrill, trembling. "Only blood, a pool of blood. No body, I felt my stomach drop. From that height, even if someone survived, they wouldn't simply walk away. But she was gone. After that day, he began having nightmares. In every dream, she stood before him, silent, smiling mockingly. Her family never searched for her. To the outside world, she had simply disappeared. Only he knew what truly happened. 1 year later, unable to endure the torment any longer, he chose to kill himself. Poison. I poured an entire pack of rat poison into my mouth, he said lightly. Within minutes, his stomach twisted violently. He vomited, convulsed. He knew the poison was working. He didn't call for help. He truly wanted to die. Perhaps he would see her again. Perhaps he could apologize. His consciousness faded. He collapsed. And then he woke up in his own house, alive. On the table beside him lay a videotape. He played it. It showed his suicide. He had no memory of filming it, but he knew he had died. He rushed to the mirror and saw that half of his body was missing. The other half was rapidly regenerating, like an invisible man becoming visible again. I realized then, what I had witnessed earlier was that same process. He explained, every time I die, my body disappears. Then I exist in a state you can't see. When I return, I'm weak, like a newborn. The tape ended. Then her face appeared. White, beautiful, smiling. Enjoy your rebirth, she asked him in the recording. You will grow tired of it. Her voice was gentle. I will never forgive you. You betrayed me. Every Valentine's Day, you will die once and return. Forever 22. Forever trapped in the day we chose death. She disappeared. He exhaled slowly. That's why I publish my obituary every year, he said quietly. She's still here, watching me, like I'm some laboratory mouse. He pointed to a tall mirror by the wall, polished clean. I discovered my eyes are connected to the camera. I don't need to film anything. I just sit in front of the mirror. And the obituaries, I asked. I beg her to forgive me, so I can truly die. He stood up abruptly. Do you know what it's like, he said, pressing his hand to his chest, to experience death 13 times? His voice trembled. Once is enough. I suggested finding someone, a priest, a monk, anyone. He laughed bitterly. I've tried everything. A Taoist once told me it's a soul curse. She didn't die that day. Something else did, and something else remained. He knelt suddenly, laughing, then crying. I'd never seen someone so desperate to die. Eventually, he told me to leave. He needed to be alone. I walked out. In the corridor, I saw a girl, tall, slender, long hair, a faint scar across her forehead, partially hidden. She smiled at me. Did you just come from him? She asked. I nodded. Today is Valentine's Day, she said. Did you buy your girlfriend chocolate? I shook my head. She handed me a piece. Give her this. Girls don't like being forgotten. It was hazelnut chocolate. When I looked up, she was gone. Back at the office, I ran into my girlfriend. Here, I said, handing her the chocolate. She looked surprised for a moment, then happily accepted it. She glanced down at the wrapper. Oh, hazelnut chocolate? Is there something wrong with that? I asked. She only smiled without answering. Then she put the chocolate into her mouth and ran off playfully. I felt a little puzzled, so later I looked it up. It turned out that hazelnut chocolate symbolizes loyalty. I looked up from my screen and thought of him. Next Valentine's Day, will he come again to publish his own obituary? Some betrayals end relationships, some end lives, and some refuse to end at all. They say death is permanent, but perhaps regret is stronger. If someone you loved asked you to die for them, would you? And if you refused, would they forgive you? Or would they make sure you remember it every year? Until next Valentine's Day, sleep carefully, because some curses don't want you dead. They just want you to keep living.